You walk into your matrimonial bedroom and find your husband giving oral sex to your sister. How would you confront a betrayal so devastating? It will shatter everything you believed in. For Emily Thompson, a sheriff, a routine DNA test revealed a shocking truth. She wasn't the biological mother of her 3 daughters. The devastating discovery uncovered a secret relationship between her husband, Ethan, and her own sister, Olivia. What followed was a crime that would send shockwaves through the entire community, a double murder that no one could have predicted. As we reflect on this real-life story, subscribe and don't forget to turn on the notification bell for more daily stories that need to be heard. Hit that subscribe button. And let us hear from you in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Now let's continue. Emily Thompson, 44 years old, was a woman defined by her dedication to justice and her unwavering integrity. As a sheriff in a small town, she had earned the respect and admiration of her community through her commitment to law enforcement and her role as a caring mother. Emily had 3 children, Sophia, 14, Anna, 10, and Sarah, 7. Though the world saw Emily as the biological mother of her children, she was not. In a revelation that would come to shock everyone, the truth was that Emily was not the biological mother of her own children. They were, in fact, her sister Olivia's children, but this fact had remained hidden for years, buried beneath a veil of secrecy. Sophia, the eldest, was already a young woman in her own right, wise beyond her years, and always taking on the role of caretaker for her younger sisters. Anna, the middle child, was intelligent but often quiet, finding solace in books and art. Sarah, the youngest, was full of life and curiosity, always asking questions and bringing joy to those around her. Despite the underlying tension in Emily's life, she had always believed her family was a model of love and stability, never suspecting the dark secrets lurking beneath the surface. Ethan Thompson, 45 years old, was Emily's husband, a well-respected local businessman with a charismatic presence. While he had always been devoted to Emily in the eyes of their community, their marriage had deeper cracks than Emily had ever realized. He was a loving father and husband, but unbeknownst to Emily, he had been living a double life, hiding a deep, secret relationship that would unravel everything they had built together. Olivia Carter, 33 years old, was Emily's younger sister, and despite the closeness they had shared during their childhood, there had always been an unspoken rivalry between them. Olivia had a bubbly personality and an infectious smile, and she was known for bringing light into any room she entered. While Emily was focused on her career and family, Olivia's carefree spirit contrasted with Emily's more disciplined life. Though they loved each other, the dynamic between them was complicated, especially as Olivia's jealousy and resentment grew in silence. The Thompson family, to the outside world, seemed to have it all. A successful businessman, a respected sheriff, and 3 beautiful children, all thriving in the comforts of a seemingly perfect life. Olivia frequently visited, and her presence was always a welcome one. She was often found in the kitchen, preparing meals with love and care, something that caught Ethan's attention. He would often praise Olivia for her cooking, admiring her skills with a fondness that Emily never thought twice about. She assumed it was simply the camaraderie between siblings, unaware of the deeper connection between her husband and her sister. Unbeknownst to Emily, Ethan and Olivia's history stretched back to their high school days, where a flirtatious and innocent bond had formed. While Emily was preoccupied with her studies and future aspirations, Ethan and Olivia's relationship had quietly grown, though Emily was oblivious to it at the time. It was only years later that this bond would resurface, but Emily was completely unaware of the true nature of their connection. While Emily prided herself on her family's stability, the truth was far more complicated. The love she had for her children, whom she had raised as her own, was real, but the biological truth was far different. The revelation of the secret would soon shatter everything Emily had believed about her family, setting off a chain of events that would lead to an unimaginable betrayal and a tragedy that would forever change the course of their lives. For months, Emily had noticed the subtle changes in Ethan. He had grown distant, irritable even, as if something weighed heavily on his mind. At first, she chalked it up to stress from his business. Running a successful company was no easy feat, especially with the constant demands of family life. But as time went on, the cracks in their once solid marriage became more apparent. It wasn't just the short, clipped conversations or his late nights at work. It was the way Ethan acted around Olivia that caught Emily's attention. At family dinners, he would often steal glances at her sister, lingering looks that Emily couldn't quite ignore. His compliments, once reserved for Emily, now seemed to flow effortlessly toward Olivia. "This soup is amazing, Olivia. You should think about opening a restaurant," Ethan would say, his voice warm with admiration. Emily had always known Ethan to be appreciative of good food, but this felt different. It wasn't just praise. It felt like something deeper. Olivia would smile coyly in response, and their shared laughter filled the room. Emily brushed it off at first, convincing herself that it was simply the familiarity of family comfort. But something inside her stirred, a feeling she couldn't shake. Over the following weeks, the subtle clues grew more frequent. Emily would catch them sharing private jokes, speaking in hushed tones that seemed to exclude her. They would exchange knowing glances when a memory was brought up, leaving Emily to wonder if she had missed something. Why did they seem to have their own world, one that didn't involve her? Olivia's visits to the house became more regular, and Ethan's attention seemed to gravitate toward her more than ever. Emily tried to dismiss her growing concerns, but deep down, something didn't feel right. I do hope you have subscribed already, as it is about to get really interesting. It all came to a head one evening when Emily found herself alone with Ethan's phone. He had left it unattended on the kitchen counter, his screen unlocked. A voice inside her told her it was wrong to snoop, but another part of her, one that had begun to doubt the integrity of her marriage, urged her to look. Hesitantly, she unlocked the phone and scrolled through the messages. Her heart stopped when she saw the exchange between Ethan and Olivia. "Are we still on for tonight?" Olivia had texted. "Of course, I can't wait to see you," Ethan had replied. The messages grew more suggestive as Emily scrolled further. "I miss you," followed by a heart emoji. "We'll make sure no one finds out," Ethan had typed in a later message. It was clear now, there was something going on between them, something that went far beyond the boundaries of friendship and family. Emily's hands trembled as she gripped the phone. Her heart ached with disbelief, each message cutting deeper than the last. The life she had built, the trust she had in her husband, seemed to crumble in an instant. She had never imagined that Ethan, the man she loved, the father of her children, could betray her in such a way. Tears welled up in her eyes as the reality of the situation began to settle in. Emily didn't know how long she stood there, staring at the screen, trying to process what she had just discovered. The shock was overwhelming, but so was the fury. She knew she couldn't ignore what was right in front of her. But instead of confronting Ethan immediately, she hesitated. A part of her, the part that had always tried to maintain peace, told her that maybe she was overreacting. Maybe she had misunderstood the context of the messages. Maybe she was reading too much into it. But deep down, Emily knew that the truth was staring her in the face. She set the phone down, her thoughts racing. What should she do? Should she confront him now? Or should she wait for him to come home, gather her thoughts, and confront him when she had the strength to do so? In the end, she chose to back off, to allow herself time to think. The weight of the discovery was too much to bear at the moment. But she also knew that this moment, this discovery, would change everything. There was no going back. The bond she once believed was unbreakable, the love she thought was unwavering, was now under threat. The seeds of doubt had been planted, and nothing would ever be the same. Emily's life was already complicated, but she had always believed she knew her family inside and out. However, everything began to unravel one fateful afternoon when a routine health checkup for her children led Emily to uncover something she never could have imagined. As she reviewed their medical histories, she noticed small discrepancies, irregularities in their genetic reports, anomalies that didn't quite add up. Though Emily had never suspected anything before, a sense of unease began to grow within her. Determined to get to the bottom of it, she decided to request DNA tests for her daughters, initially for health reasons, to better understand the conditions that might affect them. The results arrived weeks later, and what they revealed was nothing short of earth-shattering. Ethan, her husband of nearly 2 decades, was not the biological father of their 3 children. The truth struck like a blow to Emily's chest. She couldn't breathe. But it wasn't just Ethan's paternity that was in question. The DNA results confirmed an even more shocking truth. Olivia, her younger sister, was the biological mother of all 3 of her children. The devastation Emily felt was almost unbearable. She sat there, staring at the test results, her mind struggling to process the implications. How did this happen? Why had they kept this from her? Her heart raced as she began piecing together the timeline, each revelation more painful than the last. Olivia had secretly carried the children as a surrogate, but there was no surrogacy contract, no official paperwork. Emily's trust in both her husband and her sister shattered as she realized that this was all part of a carefully crafted conspiracy. Olivia and Ethan had used her, manipulating her without a single word of honesty or consent. They had both lied to her for years, and the reality of their betrayal was too much to bear. The timeline was clear now. Olivia had become pregnant long before Emily ever thought of having children, and Ethan had been in on the secret the entire time. The motivations behind their actions were becoming clearer as well. Olivia's jealousy had always simmered beneath the surface. She envied Emily's family, her life with Ethan, the love they shared, and her success in the community. And Ethan, Emily had always trusted him, never imagining that his love for her sister had grown into something darker, something twisted. He had manipulated both women, using his charm and power to keep Emily in the dark while secretly fulfilling his desires with Olivia. Emily's mind raced with questions that she couldn't even begin to answer. How had Olivia and Ethan carried out such an elaborate scheme? Why had they gone to such lengths? It was clear that they had both underestimated the depth of Emily's love for her children, her desire to protect them from harm at all costs. But now, the betrayal was laid bare, and nothing would ever be the same. The once unbreakable bond between sisters, between husband and wife, had been shattered beyond repair, leaving nothing but an empty, painful truth in its wake. The quiet, seemingly perfect world that Emily had known came crashing down with an intensity that left her reeling. She had the truth, and now she had to face it. The pain gnawed at her insides as she steeled herself for the confrontation that had been coming for weeks, months, years. She couldn't allow herself to be weak anymore, not after what they had done to her family. The time had come to demand answers, to make them face the devastation they had caused. It was at a family gathering, one that Emily had hoped would provide some semblance of normalcy, that she finally confronted them. The moment was charged with an almost unbearable tension. Emily's voice trembled with barely contained fury as she looked directly at Ethan and Olivia. Her words were a mix of heartbreak and rage, her eyes piercing through them as she demanded to know why they had lied to her for so long. The room grew silent, the once joyful hum of family conversation replaced with a thick, suffocating air. Olivia, ever the charmer, simply smiled at Emily. But this smile wasn't the warm, carefree grin Emily had once admired. No, this time, it felt hollow. It felt taunting. A mockery of everything Emily had believed in. Her sister's usual bubbly personality seemed to have vanished, replaced by a cold, indifferent demeanor. Olivia's eyes sparkled with something dark, something that suggested she had always been in control, always the one pulling the strings. She made no attempt to justify her actions, only smirking at Emily's pain. Ethan, on the other hand, stood there, barely speaking, his face etched with guilt. But even that seemed like a feeble attempt to make up for years of lies and deceit. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. Every word they spoke, every answer they gave, only dug the knife deeper into the wound. It wasn't just the betrayal of her husband, it was the betrayal of her sister, the woman she had trusted the most in the world. Emily could barely process the enormity of what they had done to her children, to their entire family. The quiet, seemingly perfect world that Emily had known came crashing down with an intensity that left her reeling. She had the truth, and now she had to face it. The pain gnawed at her insides as she steeled herself for the confrontation that had been coming for weeks, months, years. The final blow came on a fateful evening when Emily returned home early from a late shift. She had missed Ethan's birthday, and she was eager to make it up to him. She walked into their bedroom, expecting to find him waiting for her, but the sight that greeted her sent shockwaves through her body. There, in their bed, where Ethan and Olivia were right there enjoying and having sexual intercourse between them both alone. Emily's heart shattered into a million pieces as the truth unfolded before her eyes. The man she loved, the father of her children, was having sexual intercourse with her own sister. The betrayal was a dagger to her heart, a betrayal so profound that it ignited a fire of rage within her. The room still echoed with the silence of Emily's broken heart, the chaos of betrayal hanging heavy in the air. Her hands trembled as she processed the horror that had unfolded in front of her, the betrayal she had just witnessed. The tears hadn't come yet, only the anger, the intense, all-consuming rage that clouded her mind and vision. She had tried to hold it together, tried to convince herself that there was a way to fix things, a way to salvage what was left of her family. But now, all of that seems impossible. The man she had shared her life with, the sister she had trusted with her children, had shattered everything. In a moment that felt both surreal and inevitable, Emily found herself standing at the doorway of her bedroom, her hand moving toward the service weapon holstered at her side. It felt like an out-of-body experience, a part of her screaming in protest while another part, something darker, more desperate, took control. She couldn't just stand there, unable to act. She had to make them understand what they had done to her children. Her breath caught as she drew the weapon. Ethan turned to her, his face a mixture of guilt and disbelief, but it was too late for remorse now. His eyes widened in shock as she raised the gun. Without warning, in a blur of motion, the sound of the shot rang out, loud and deafening. Ethan collapsed, his body crumpling to the floor, a look of disbelief still frozen on his face. The man she had married, the father of her children, was gone in an instant. But Emily wasn't done. The rage inside her had grown into something all-encompassing, and now Olivia was standing at the other end of the room, her face pale, her smile gone. The reality of the situation seemed to hit her too late. Olivia, with her usual charm and manipulative smile, was no longer the sister Emily had loved. She was now a traitor, an enemy, and Emily's grief turned into a single, unstoppable force. Olivia tried to flee. She turned and bolted toward the door, her frantic footsteps echoing in the silence of the house. But Emily was faster, her emotions fueling her actions as she closed the distance between them. The two women faced off, locked in a tense standoff, a lifetime of history between them now nothing but a burden. Olivia was shaking, pleading, but Emily's mind was clear. There was no going back. "Please, don't," Olivia whispered, her voice cracking as she backed into the corner. But Emily didn't listen. She didn't need to hear more lies. With a steady hand, Emily fired, the shot piercing the air and ending Olivia's life in an instant. The sister she had once loved was gone, leaving behind nothing but the echoes of her betrayal. The sound of the gunshot seemed to reverberate throughout the house, a final, deafening punctuation to the tragic story that had unfolded. Emily stood there, breathless, her body numb as she looked at the two lifeless bodies before her. The gravity of what she had just done hit her all at once, but it was too late. The damage had been done. In the next moment, Emily's thoughts turned to her children. They had to be kept safe. Her hands were trembling as she turned away from the scene, trying to gather what little control she had left. The shock was settling in, but her instinct to protect her children remained. She forced herself to act, moving quickly toward the stairs where she heard their cries echoing from their rooms. "Go to your rooms," she said, her voice shaky but firm. "Stay there. Don't come out until I say it's okay." Her children, confused and scared, obeyed, rushing toward their rooms with the sound of their footsteps, the only thing breaking the silence in the house. Emily stood for a moment in the middle of the hallway, unsure of what to do next, but she knew one thing: she had to call for help. She had to face what she had done, even if it was the hardest thing she had ever had to do. With trembling hands, she reached for her phone, dialing 911. As the operator's voice came through, Emily's heart was heavy with remorse and resolve. The words that came out of her mouth were shaky, but they were clear. I need help," Emily said, her voice barely audible. I've just shot them. I killed my husband and my sister." The operator's question seemed distant, as if from a faraway place, but Emily could barely focus on them. All that mattered now was the moment she had just created. The world she had known was gone, and in its place was nothing but the aftermath of an irreversible act. The sharp sound of sirens filled the air as the authorities arrived at the scene. Emily sat on the floor in the middle of the hallway, her back against the wall, her eyes hollow from the shock of what had just transpired. The weapon she had used lay discarded beside her, the weight of it, of everything, too much to bear. She made no attempt to run, no attempt to hide. The battle was over, and the chaos inside her had come to a head. Now, she was ready to face whatever came next. The officers hesitated as they entered the house, finding her sitting quietly, almost eerily composed, given the circumstances. She did not resist when they approached her, did not make a sound as they handcuffed her and read her the rights that now defined her future. The devastation of the moment settled in for Emily as they led her out of the house, the flashing lights of the police cars illuminating her path. The weight of the decision she had made was now manifesting in the cold, clinical reality of the arrest. Outside, the community that had once looked up to Emily as a trusted sheriff and a pillar of integrity was now left reeling from the shocking turn of events. News of the double murder spread like wildfire, leaving everyone in disbelief. People whispered in hushed tones, trying to make sense of how the woman who had always been the embodiment of law and order could be capable of such violence. The media frenzy that followed was unlike anything the town had ever seen. Headlines screamed her name, framing her as both the villain and the victim of a tragic, twisted love story. But the facts were undeniable. The woman they had known as Sheriff Emily Thompson had killed her husband and sister in cold blood. As the investigation unfolded, the details of the affair between Ethan and Olivia, Emily's own sister, came to light, unraveling a sordid tale of deception and betrayal. The shocking revelation of the DNA tests, which confirmed that Olivia was the biological mother of Emily's 3 daughters, only deepened the public's fascination with the story. What had begun as a quiet family drama now seemed like the stuff of a true crime novel. Emily remained silent for most of the questioning, her demeanor cold and detached as she faced the detectives who were trying to piece together the chain of events. Her stoic expression revealed nothing, no anger, no regret, just a sense of resignation. She didn't need to speak to make her guilt clear. It was written in her actions, in the aftermath that followed. Every answer she gave seemed calculated, as if she were detached from the gravity of her actions, her mind still processing the whirlwind of events that had led to this moment. There was no denial. Emily had no need to explain herself. The evidence was overwhelming, and the guilt weighed heavily on her. She didn't fight it. She didn't defend herself. She simply sat, awaiting what would come next, knowing that whatever her fate would be, it would never erase the devastation she had brought into her life, and the lives of her children, who would now grow up with this tragic chapter forever attached to their family name. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Emily took the stand. She was no longer the respected sheriff, the woman everyone had trusted. Now, she was the face of a tragedy, the woman whose actions had stunned an entire community. Her once poised and confident demeanor was replaced by the weight of guilt and regret as she recounted the events that had led to the deaths of her husband and sister. In her testimony, Emily spoke of the betrayal that had shattered her world. Her voice trembled as she described the heart-wrenching moment she discovered the truth, the DNA test that revealed Olivia was the biological mother of her children, Ethan's affair, the lies and the deception that had been carefully hidden from her for years. The raw emotion in her voice resonated throughout the courtroom, but the anger and heartbreak that had driven her to such a violent act were clear. She had been blindsided by those she loved most, and in the midst of that emotional chaos, she had lost control. Her words painted a picture of a woman who had reached her breaking point, a woman who had been consumed by a moment of rage so powerful that it led to irreversible consequences. Emily's testimony was filled with sorrow, but it did little to absolve her of the crimes she had committed. The defense team argued that Emily had acted in a state of temporary insanity, overcome by grief, betrayal, and a fractured sense of reality. They pleaded for compassion, for understanding of the psychological toll the betrayal had taken on her, but it was a tough sell. On the other side, the prosecution painted a different picture. They called Emily a cold-blooded killer, someone who had planned the murders with chilling precision. The fact that she had retrieved her service weapon and executed both victims in a calculated act of violence seemed to support this claim. The prosecution reminded the jury of the evidence, her lack of remorse during questioning, her calm demeanor during the arrest, and the shocking details of the affair and the surrogacy scheme. To them, Emily wasn't a victim of circumstance. She was a woman who had allowed betrayal to consume her, ultimately resulting in the deaths of two people. The jury deliberated for hours, but the weight of the evidence was undeniable. Emily's emotional testimony, while deeply moving, did not erase the fact that she had taken two lives in a moment of rage. When the verdict was read aloud, it was clear Emily Thompson would spend the rest of her life in prison without the possibility of parole. Her hands trembled as the judge pronounced her sentence, and for a brief moment, she looked out at the courtroom, her eyes meeting the gazes of the family members in the crowd. The faces of her children, who had been left behind in the wake of this tragedy, flashed in her mind. Their lives would never be the same, and neither would hers. As the gavel struck, signaling the end of the trial, Emily's fate was sealed. The sheriff who had once stood for justice had now become a prisoner of her own actions, forced to live with the consequences of the betrayal, heartbreak, and violence that had irrevocably changed the course of her life. The aftermath of Emily's tragic actions reverberates through her family, particularly her three daughters. Sophia, Anna, and Sarah are left to navigate a life torn apart by the brutal loss of both parents in a single night. Their world, once full of comfort and security, is now a haunting reminder of betrayal, violence, and a shattered home. The echoes of that fateful night, when Emily's rage led to the deaths of her husband and sister, will linger with them forever. The children are forced to grow up without the guidance of their mother, who now resides in prison, a shadow of the woman they once knew. For Emily, the toll of her actions is incomprehensible. In seeking revenge for the deepest betrayal, she destroyed the very family she was trying to protect. As we reflect on this devastating tale, we are reminded of how deep emotional wounds can lead to irreversible decisions. Betrayal, especially from those closest to us, can unravel our lives in ways we never expect. Emily's story is a poignant reminder that, when faced with emotional turmoil and pain, it's crucial to reach out for help before it's too late. Anger and heartbreak unchecked can have devastating consequences, as we've seen in Emily's life. What would you have done in Emily's shoes? Could justice ever heal the scars left by such deep betrayal? This case forces us to confront the darker aspects of human emotion, reminding us that even those we trust the most can turn our lives upside down. As we reflect on Emily's journey, we ask, can any form of justice ever truly heal the wounds left by betrayal? We'd love to hear your thoughts on Emily's story. How do you think you would have handled such an unimaginable betrayal? Share your comments below. Your input could shed light on a perspective we might have missed. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping true crime stories. Your support helps us continue to bring these stories to light and spark important conversations. Do enjoy your day and stay safe out there.